You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitri Vietze. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors, the PR firm that specializes in music tech and music innovation, and also the Music Tectonics Conference, which takes place in late October in LA here in 2023. And this may be one of our most visited guests on the Music Tectonics podcast. I've got with me Tim Exile from Endless. Tim, how you doing?
Very well, sir. How are you?
Doing great. You know, you were on when you were a 2019 Medium Lab finalist, and then kind of a weird sort of winner. They like created a category for you or something, or they did like a double win for the education category. What was it?
Yeah, so we co-won, and honestly, it's such a long time ago. It's almost 4 years ago now. I can't remember the exact title of the category, but we basically co-won with an app called Jamble, which I think was it was a kind of a take on the same thing, which is sort of, the democratization of music, gamification of music, but with quite different approaches to it. So it was great. It was great to co-win.
That was cool. Yeah, they're cool. And then we had you again on the podcast in 2020 during the pandemic. We did a series on remote collaboration, and you were already up and running by then. I think you actually jammed on the podcast in real time, so that was super fun if people want to go back and listen to either of those two podcasts. But I brought you back because you sent me an email that made me a little crazy, like a little excited, like, oh, shoot, am I going to drop some money on this thing? You came out with this Endless Arcade. You took the Endless system, operating system, whatever, and package it up into something that looks like a video game. What is the Endless Arcade machine, Tim?
Well, it really is just what it says on the tin. It's an arcade machine. It's a beat-making arcade machine that sits in, the arcade machine form factor that you'd expect to see in a video games mall or a video games bar, or the collector, a games room of a video game collector. What I find really interesting about it is that it's so obvious. When people see it, they're just like, wow, it's a beat making arcade machine. Why has nobody done this before? And the reason nobody's done it before is because actually the way that Endless approaches music making and music, everything to do with music, is really gamifying the whole process. And when I say gamifying, what I really mean is turning everything to do with music creation, from the first idea right the way through to the music getting into someone's hands, into someone's ears, is that every step along the way becomes an interaction, like a social interaction. So the way Endless works, you spin up a beat, in a very physical way by actually playing it in. You commit that. You can share that instantly to a bunch of people. And so the process feels like playing a game. So, since I was last on the podcast, we've rolled out a desktop version. It's on Windows, it's on Mac OS. You can run it as a plugin inside your DAW. You can run it as a standalone. You can run plugins inside it. I mean, we've built out, an entire ecosystem for music making around what was originally just an iOS app. And it was just a natural fit to take what we've built and put that in an arcade machine cabinet. The magic kind of twist in the story is that it actually started as a project by one of our community members. So this guy, NJ Lang, is a long-term Endless user. He posted in our Discord server pretty much exactly a year ago, what if Endless was an arcade machine? And everyone was just like, wow, this is an amazing idea. And then, a couple of days later, he came back with a bunch of Photoshop mock-ups. And everyone was just like, this is amazing. And it just sort of went on and on like that. A week later, he came back with some actual physical boxes, like a flight case he'd found around his house. And then a month later, he'd ordered a bunch of components. And flash forward to June last year, he'd actually created the first prototype of the Endless Arcade machine. We were on our way to New York for NFT NYC to demo Endless. And we were just like, hey, NJ is based in Kansas. why don't you come to New York, show people the arcade machine? And that's what happened. And everybody lost their shit. Sorry, if I could say that. People absolutely loved the arcade machine. It perfectly encapsulates everything that Endless is in a single visual, interactive experience.
Let me ask you, Tim, if you walk up to this machine, what do you see?
You see, you see where you'd have a normal kind of arcade console, you've got the same arcade buttons, but instead of those, firing weapons, those are laid out like the pad grid that you see on an Akai NPC. You've got 4x4 grid of arcade buttons. They trigger sounds. You've got a traditional arcade joystick, which you can use to navigate through different sounds. And then we've got some extra bits that we added in to interoperate with the Endless interface. We've got an XY pad that allows you to control the effects, and we've got some extra buttons that allow you to navigate instruments more deeply and also commit loops.
Right.
And
yeah. So I remember from our previous interview that one of the interesting things about Endless that worked so well during the pandemic and with people collaborating remotely, and probably continues to work well, is that you would create a loop, commit it, aka send it, almost like a text message or something. It would get committed and sent to the group that you were using, whoever was in the quote room or whatever, and then they could just add layers on top of that. So you're saying that that's still there inside the arcade, and that the arcade is actually still communicating in one of those rooms with other Endless users.
Exactly. Yeah. So every time you play something in the arcade, once you've played something, you then hit that commit button. That loops it on your end, but also sends it to anybody else you're collaborating with. So you can collaborate with beat makers, songwriters, music makers, producers all over the world directly from the arcade machine.
Hey, why don't we hear some sounds from it? You got something you can play from that was made with the arcade?
Yes. Yeah. Let me just cue something up.
Awesome. So was that something that was solely on the arcade, or were they collaborating with other folks from Endless in that piece you just played?
Yeah, so that was a collaboration. So that there were a lot of different people adding to the melting pot on that riff. It's worth pointing out that the arcade machine it's using the same sound engine that all versions of the Endless app use, and also those you can now, as of a few months ago, you can now load plugins into Endless. So essentially, you can any sounds you've got, whether it's plugins or hardware synths or acoustic instruments, you can use those with Endless. Also, you can use those with the arcade machine.
There's like a interface of some sort that they can upload stuff to the arcade.
Exactly. Yeah, you can customize the arcade machine to host your VST plugins.
I gotta say, Tim, I grew up in the era of physical arcade games. When I was about 11 years old, I would ride my bike a little too far from home to the local 7-Eleven convenience store, and somehow I got to know the manager. And he let me clean up the parking lot, and in exchange, he handed me a Big Gulp, which is a really large, very, very, very large cola, a sandwich, and the keys to the video games. And so I could just sit there. I wasn't that good. I didn't love video games. I just kind of liked having that special access. And it was like my first job, basically. But if they had had a beat machine there, it would have changed my life. And I could imagine, like all arcades, if this thing came back, if it reaches scale and is in those public places where people gather, bars, arcades, convenience stores. I mean, now they have them in doctors' offices. It's like this retro thing, dentists, kids dentists, things like that. I could see like a whole other a whole other generation where their parents didn't even know about beat making, and there they are getting started.
100%. I mean, this is, you've kind of described the effect that it has on a room. People just gravitate to it. They see this arcade machine, and they're like, "Oh wow, cool! You've got an arcade machine here." And then they kind of double take, and they're just like, "Oh wow, okay, so you've got like a beat studio on an arcade machine." And because it's not, Endless is a lot more straightforward than a DAW like Ableton Live. We don't have kind of this big timeline, all these arrange windows and tiny little fiddly controls. It's very immediate, and we actually have the arcades come with a touch screen, so the full interface is touch interactive. And just seeing people who've never made music before step up to this machine and start making music, and feel that visceral sense of like, wow, I pressed that button, and music happened, it's very compelling, and it's one of the biggest kind of curveball surprises that I've had since starting to build the Endless platform. As the team, we're all really enthusiastic about hardware. We all love hardware, but we've all been kind of winding our necks in a bit, going like, oh yeah, maybe someday we'll get to make hardware. But it turns out actually this might even be the killer application for Endless, that will get it everywhere.
Yeah. And do you think it'll, quote, get everywhere? Do you think there's a path to this thing being like in bars everywhere?
Yeah, but potentially. I mean, it's early days yet. We're just beginning to roll this out. We're about to announce a first kind of launch edition. We're doing a very short run of 25 of them. They're going to go on sale around the end of Feb. We've already got a bunch of people who are interested, so I'm pretty sure that they're going to sell out instantly. But so yeah, I mean, find us at Endless FM if you're interested in an arcade machine, in an Endless arcade machine.
And once it gets deployed in kind of public spaces, I'm sure there's some music heads and some gear heads and some gaming heads that have a little extra cash to spend that'll jump on it. Those will be the first 25. There'll be people you may have met, maybe some performers that have made some money on tour that just want another little gadget at home, whatever. But how do you expect people to use it if it scales? If you start, if you get 10,000 out there, what do you think if somebody walks up to it? What do you expect them to do?
So one of the things we're actually working on for the production units that are going to roll out is a remote login. So each machine will have its own unique QR code. So you can walk up to the machine with your mobile device. If you've never used Endless before, you scan the QR code, set up a user account very, very quick, and then it logs you into that machine. So that machine will have, if it's the first time we've used Endless, it'll give you a run through on how to use the machine. And you can make your first beat then and there in this public place. If you have an Endless account, it'll populate it with all the jams you're in, all the riffs you've made, all the sound packs you've created, everything you've bought, everything you've traded, everything you sold. So you could, let's say it's a bit, you see these like pianos in train stations. This is a whole thing. There's like YouTube videos. There's videos all over YouTube of these pianos in public places, and people come and step up to the piano and do something amazing. Like I see that happening with Endless arcade machines. So you'll have somebody who's been on Endless for ages and has got really, really good at it. It's got loads of beat making skills, and they're an OG of the Endless ecosystem, and they just come up, hold up their phone, scan the QR code, log in, and there they are. They've got all their sound sets ready to just like mash away in this public place and really turn some heads.
I love it. So how will you keep the devices fresh and running? I mean, that's a big undertaking.
Well, so they come with over-the-air updates. So the collector's editions will obviously it runs on software which is constantly being developed. There's also going to be a special kind of arcade edition of the software that is designed specifically for these machines. But the great thing about getting an Endless arcade is that you're not just buying a piece of hardware which in a few years' time will become obsolete. That you're you're in a sense you're buying a node into an ecosystem, a software ecosystem, a platform, which is constantly being developed.
Got it. Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right, look, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about the business model. We'll be right back.
Are you cooking up something cool during South by Southwest? Help your music tech friends find your music tech event in Austin this March. Tell us about your panels, meetups, parties, or activations that involve music tech and music innovation. We'll add them to our unofficial guide and spread the word to the Music Tectonics community. There's a link to submit your event on the blog at musictectonics.com, or find Music Tectonics on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. The link is in our bio. Want to get your hands on the unofficial guide? Make sure you're signed up for the Music Tectonics newsletter at musictectonics.com. We'll email you when it's ready. Now back to the episode.
All right, we're back here with Tim Exile from Endless. We're talking about the Endless arcade machine. You started to talk a little bit about, how you can log in with a QR code and get directly into the your existing sound packs and your existing jams and everything else with the arcade itself. What do you think? And I know you've got 25 kind of a limited edition run of the first 25 actual arcades. What's the long-term business model for the arcade machine?
Well, for the arcade machine, it's going to be a combination. So a combination between units that we will sell, and I think certainly for the foreseeable future, it's all going to be very short run, very limited, because they're all hand built right now. At some point in the future, we've got some conversations going in the background about potential partnerships that we could do, providing maybe bigger venues, for example, with, let's say they've got a regular, it's a music venue and they've got artists coming through there all the time. Then the arcade machine could be a way for artists who are coming through to give the people who are attending their shows a more lean forward experience of their music. There are so many ways that we could leverage the arcade machines, and this kind of like super high end collector's edition thing is really just the beginning. And of course, it plugs into the wider ecosystem, as I was talking about. So the business model there is, in the long run, we're looking to build a peer-to-peer digital economy where you can create pieces of music, you can create sound packs, you can create these digital artifacts, you can kind of press them as you can package them up, and let's say there's 100 editions of a riff, or there's 100 editions of a sound pack. You can then sell those on a marketplace, and we take a cut. That's the business model that we're going to in the long run. We're also very aware that there's a lot of people who like to use Endless more as a tool to plug into other ecosystems. So we're later this year, we're going to be rolling out a very kind of like focused subscription that is for the real kind of like power users who want the really hardcore features. But that's going to be much more of a kind of niche business model. The core of Endless is essentially a consumer social music platform. It's end to end, from your first idea through every interaction, making everything social, right the way from creation to sharing to discovery to listening. So whatever our business model is, we don't want to get in the way of the network effects.
Yeah, cool. Let's rewind a tiny bit, since we did jump in really excited to talk about the Endless Arcade, and we've sort of hinted at Endless, the app, the platform pre-arcade. Let's just back it up a little bit. Maybe explain, if you log into the Endless app for the first time, what's the first thing you see? What's the first thing you do? How do you get into jams with other people? And then what happens from there?
When you download the app for the first time, we take you straight into an onboarding mission, which basically it removes all the cognitive load. It shows you a video of what you're about to do, and then it drops you straight into a bunch of pads that you can play. And then it shows you the looper, which allows you to capture what you've just played. Then it takes you onto another screen. It gives you another sound set, and it basically takes you through layering up your first riff on Endless without surfacing anything you don't need to know about. And then it just breaks down from there. So we then take you on subsequent different missions that show you more of the features about the features of Endless, the sounds, how it operates. And then, our goal really is to get you to a level of proficiency where you're just like, oh, okay, I got this. I see how this works. Then we take you into the main home screen of the app where you can find other people who are on the platform right now that you can jam with. You can join open jams, which are kind of pre-populated jams that anybody can jump into and collaborate with. And, we're building out all the social features. As we speak, there's a ton of stuff that's still being built right now. For example, like the notification center and a bunch of extra features. So that's like the typical journey into Endless. We teach you how to use the tool in a very simple way. Then we introduce you to the community. And once you're connected with the community, you'll be able to find all sorts of people who will, teach you the more kind of esoteric teachings of the ins and outs of Endless and how to get really great results out of it.
What are some of the coolest things that have happened on Endless over the last year or so?
Oh, wow. There are so many bands and groups and projects that have formed. There are people who've met. There's a couple that met on Endless now, from opposite sides of the world who have now moved in together.
How far apart were they? Where were they from?
Canada and Germany.
Canada and Germany?
Yeah. Well, I think they're currently in Germany. So
wow.
Yeah.
So it's basically like Tinder, but with music.
Well, there's definitely that aspect to it, I think. The people who really stick around on Endless are the people who have found ways to build relationships with each other. So, this is very specifically, this is the feature set that we're leaning into now. We've spent 3 or 4 years really concentrating on building the creator tool. And now we're focusing on that kind of matchmaking in a way, or just bringing people into contact with each other. Because when you can, on Endless, you can communicate through making music without words. So you can build a completely sort of non-semantic relationship with someone by jamming with them on Endless. And a lot of magic has come about just through that way. And I think there is this kind of like the crazy out there case is that actually you can find that kind of magic synergy that you have with somebody that you can't put into words. Maybe there's a world where that's actually easier to find through music. If you can really jam with someone just by kind of sharing beats and vocals and melodies back and forth and remixing them, that like you can really feel if you actually vibe with someone on that very kind of like basic sort of pre-verbal level.
Okay, guys, don't joke about Endless and Tinder. Tim gets really serious. He means it. So cool. Any other stories from the last year you want to shout out?
Oh boy. Well, when we rolled out the beta of our NFT marketplace, so that we kind of ran that like summer last year, Q3 last year. We rolled it out to just a few people on the platform just to kind of see how people behaved. So there's like 3,000 tokens collected. We're now kind of taking all the learnings that we learned from that and more specifically building out let's say kind of a non-Web3 way to interact in that, because I think that's really important to people. People don't really want to think about all the jargon, but I think the actual use cases are very powerful. So that was great seeing rolling that out to people and seeing how that ultimately it deepened people's relationships on the platform. And I think social commerce is something that we've seen in the kind of quote unquote real economy, as in the economy of tangible goods. Have platforms like Etsy and Depop that have community at the core of sort of peer-to-peer trading of physical goods. And that's very much where I see Web3 going, and that very much was the case when we had the NFT marketplace in beta. You could see that this kind of circular economy of someone would create a riff, someone would collect it, and then the royalties that they got from that, they'd then go and buy someone else's riff, and you could feel that it added a layer of sort of permanence and progress to the relationship building, which we hadn't seen before.
Super cool. Love it. So getting back to the arcade, who's going to buy these first ones?
So the place, I mean, ultimately, we don't really know. We've taken the arcade we've seen the arcade in a few different scenarios. It works really well in public spaces because it grabs people's attention. So I think there's gonna be quite a few venues who'd be interested in getting hold of an arcade. We've had, there's a bunch of individuals already who have said, "Hey, I want," some celebrities were like in our DMs going like, "Yo, I want an arcade. How do I get one?" As soon as the news broke that we were making these arcades. So, yeah, I think we're going to see some, really diehard collectors, music fans, artists who've had some success, like you were saying. I think music venues. It's a really great case for a music venue, and also music companies, bigger music companies who might have a social space or a lobby. I mean, I think it goes great in social spaces. Also, recording studios, bigger recording studios. My dream would be that Abbey Road would pick one up. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? I might have to hit them up.
Very cool. Awesome. And you mentioned if somebody wants to check out more, where do they go to check out the arcade and think about buying one?
Head to discover.endless.fm. That's endless with 3 S's. discover.endless.fm/arcade. It's currently that, we're not really sharing that site publicly right now. We're working towards a launch date in about a month's time. We've got a ton of content we're shooting. We're working with Imogen Heap, who's a dear friend of mine, and has been very, very generously let us take over her roundhouse. So we're going there. We're going to shoot a bunch of really cool content around the arcade. Imogen's going to do a performance on it, and so all of that. We've got some really stunning content we're preparing for the main launch in late Feb.
Very cool. So podcast listeners, you may have heard about it first here. So good thing you're listening. I was curious, have you seen other arcade-like products that are musical like this? I mean, it almost reminds me of the playfulness of a giant teenage engineering device or something like that. But is there any other precedent or inspiration?
Not that I've seen. I mean, I have since seen a couple of. I think we're not the first people to have the idea of like, ooh, what would happen if you brought arcade machines and music making together? I think there was an expo, I can't even remember the name of it now, recently, where I saw somebody had put like a modular synth in an arcade cabinet.
More like custom work, not anything that somebody's tried to like really produce.
Yeah, I think no one's really tried to make a real standalone product out of it. I think we're the first to market there, but I'm also happy to be wrong. I mean, it's a big wide world, and many people, usually if somebody's having an idea along some line, it's not, there's a zeitgeist element to it as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's some gamification in a sense. Other than the form factor, is there any other? Can you talk a little bit about that connection to video games?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that the very core creation experience is, I mean, what's great about games are real time. It's a real time experience. What keeps people coming back to, well, I mean, we could go on a real deep dive here, but the TLDR is what keeps people coming back to media and creativity these days is content. What keeps people coming back to games is skill. So as a gamer, the thing, your long tail, if you like, is your skill. Like the better you get at playing a certain game or playing a number of different titles, that's what ultimately builds your audience. In media, including music, it's content. So as a recording artist, you look to build up a body of work, and you'll continue to grow that body of work and monetize it and find new contexts for recontextualizing the work, etc. So when I talk about the gamification of music, I talk about pivoting the focus of creativity away from the creation of content towards the development of skill. So on Endless, people are, there is a content long tail. Now we have profiles, so you can go to endless.fm/Tim Exile and you can see the riffs I've posted, and you can go to anyone else's profile. So that there is this long tail of content. But what really builds your reputation on Endless is your skill. People know you for what you can do, not just for what you have done. And that, I think, is what is the broadest theme of gamification.
Tim, clearly you are a big thinker about the future of music and music tech and music innovation. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm curious to hear what other trends you're tracking in music innovation. We'll be right back.
Eleanor here. I just dropped in to say, if you like what you hear about the Endless Arcade, we're bringing you a chance to play with one at the NAMM Show 2023. Music Tectonics and Triple G Ventures are teaming up with the most creative new musical inventions at our Innovate at NAMM booth. If you're attending the show, meet us at the Anaheim Convention Center, number 10105. The Endless Arcade is just one of the music-making tools and toys you can try. Will I see you in Anaheim?
All right, we're back, Tim. Like I said, man, you've got me going in all directions in my head. This is so fun to hear your process and the product that's coming out as a result of that, and also to hear that it was like community source. Such cool stuff. The way you think about all these things, from community building, to, your use of social commerce, and how you think about music and gamification, and the importance of knowing what somebody's capable of doing rather than what they've done. Super interesting, forward thinking. I'm curious, what other trends are you tracking in music innovation?
Well, I think all the trends in music innovation, in innovation in creativity, there's a 100-year shift happening right now. We look back to the evolution of the early days of the media industry, everything music, film, but 150 years ago. These industries all evolved to solve a problem which you had at the time. The world was globalizing. We were beginning to have transnational relationships with people through trading, etc. But we didn't have access to culture. Culture was still very local. So people knew that there were amazing shows happening on Broadway, but they couldn't get access to them, and there was amazing music being played here and there and the other. So the media industry evolved to find these like 1 in a million artifacts that would sell 1 million copies, and everybody would get a copy of the same thing. And ta-da, we solved the problem of access to culture. Flash forward to now, we have the opposite problem, because that problem has been essentially oversolved. So we're now bombarded with culture. We have social media, which is pulling our attention in all sorts of directions. And we've lost our frame of cultural reference. We're constantly being kind of culturally rugged every day because we have to keep up with the latest trends. It's very hard to feel a sense of identity. So we have huge amounts of anxiety, mental health problems, etc. So the 100-year shift in culture is away from trying to solve the access problem towards trying to solve the meaning problem. Which is, the relationships problem, the depth problem. We essentially, I think, as a species, we've built this digital world, and now we need to find our digital local. We've got digital global, which is amazing, and we need to find this digital local, which means we need to find contexts that we can find people who we really vibe with, and we can build a meaningful relationship with them that will stand the test of time, that has a solid concrete foundation, that we know that what we're doing now, may lead to something really amazing in 10, 20 years time, which is, that's how we were used to operating when we lived in our local villages. So that's why I'm still really bullish on Web3, because that essentially adds a layer of immutability to our digital footprints, and I think that's why it's really going to win in the long run. It's going to be, right now everybody's hyped about AI. Yes, AI is really great, but the risk of AI is that it just adds to the ubiquity of everything and the meaninglessness of everything. If you can put in a prompt and create a thing that is as good as the thing that the artist who that data set was trained on is, then we risk losing even more our sense of agency. So AI could help us with our sense of agency, but it could also take us in the opposite direction. So I think the combination of AI and Web3 is really, really interesting, because then we can, the AI will give us a faster path to water, to saying what we mean or what we want to say. And Web3 will give us the sort of immutable infrastructure beneath that, to make sure that what we say is cumulative rather than ephemeral.
Yeah. Amazing big thoughts. Now, one last thing before we let you go, Tim Exile of Endless with 3 S's. We like to build our network. Music Tectonics is about community. So we like to ask guests if they can name 3 music tech innovators or companies that our audience should check out, especially folks that maybe we haven't heard about yet. Who's on your mind? Who are the people you follow, whether they're thought leaders or they're actually building stuff, startup founders, collaborators, competitors, whatever it may be? Who are a few folks you can share with us?
Well, I'm pretty sure your readers will have heard of Water and Music, but if you haven't heard of Water and Music, you really need to check out what they're doing, because they are really blazing a trail with the depth of thought and research. I'm trying to think. Harmon AI. I think it's really interesting what they're doing, using applying stable diffusion to music. Along that line, there's a company called Moobit. They do kind of AI navigated. It's not actually directly generated by AI, but artists can upload stems, create stems, and the Moobit AI will create these kind of evolving soundscapes based on those stems. That's really interesting. God, I'm on the spot now. I'm trying to think who else. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in Web3. It's very, Web3 is very much in cockroach mode right now, because it's sort of, it's kind of right now it's fallen out of favor. It will come back. Like I guarantee you that it's going to come back. And there are so many projects there deep diving in, creating new models for essentially building communities, building resilient, long-lasting communities. So kind of, big shout out to everybody in that space.
Nice, Tim. It's been a blast. If people want to connect with you, are you going to be at any conferences or festivals coming up in 2023? We should try to hook up with you there.
Potentially. I actually just became a dad just under a month ago, to twins. Yes. Yes. So my travel permissions are limited right now, but you're always welcome to hit me up. Find me. I'm at Tim Exile on Twitter. That's where I usually hang out the most. I'm also, do come to the Endless Discord. Head to Endless with 3s's.fm, and you'll find all the links to how to connect with us there.
Awesome. Do you think we could end with another sample from the Endless Arcade?
Yes. Let me rustle one up.
All right. Tim, thank you so much for joining Music Tectonics. This is Endless Arcade taking us out. See you soon, Tim.
Thank you, Dmitri.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know you can dig deeper into all our episodes with the show notes at musictectonics.com. While you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference, sign up for our newsletter to get updates, or get the Music Tectonics app for music tech news. Everything we do explores seismic shifts that shake up music and technology the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and find me, Dmitri Vietze, if you can spell it, on LinkedIn. Bye-bye.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.